Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Gnyp Gnop. It's another Friday here on the big
An exciting
interweb.
Friday.
It's the interweb. I'm Greg Gnyp. I will be the Gnyp. There's your Gnop, Chris Yazinski. How
Hey,
are
everybody.
you, my friend?
I am better than the average bear. I am so excited to have one of our old friends from the Northern Pikes on today. So
You know, and I'm going to be honest. I was busy looking, and because I knew I had saved. I had a Northern Pikes sweatshirt from like 1985, 86. Do you remember? They were like the little half sweatshirts.
Yeah.
With the cutoff.
Oh, jeez. Hey, wait a minute. All right, Don.
Let's bring him in.
Right,
You know
but
what?
first,
Don Schmid,
first,
come on in.
First, let's do a little bit of Teen Land first while we do that. A little bit of Northern Pikes for everybody on a great Friday afternoon. So live from the Fraser Valley in British Columbia, joining us today, the drummer, one of the founding members, Don Schmid from the Northern Pikes. Hey, Don, so great to see you, buddy.
Hey, thanks, guys. Good to see you, too.
Yeah.
Good day, sir. Yeah, see, so I was my goal was to find this sweatshirt.
And wear
The
it?
thing was, well, I was going to wear it, but I was going to have to put it probably on my thigh. You know? Because I still remember buying it and being like, okay, first of all, I was probably first or second year university.
Yep.
In a lot better shape than I am now, and being like, okay, this is, you know, but it was the sweatshirt that I never wore without like a t-shirt on underneath because I never bared my midriff just because, you know. But I'm like, well, how would I wear it on the show? And I'm like, well, I guess as like a thigh warmer.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do
So
that.
I'm kind of glad maybe that I didn't find it.
Yeah. So look at we wanted to get Don on because we wanted to kind of catch up with our good friends from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and what's been going on. You guys have a new album coming out, and you've been doing some touring.
Well, pre-COVID, we were touring all the time, really. But since COVID started, we've played 2 outdoor shows this last summer, festival shows.
Okay. And
one in Saskatoon and one in Winnipeg. And then we had a 3rd show that was canceled. You might remember Hurricane Larry in Newfoundland about a month ago.
Yeah.
September 10th, yeah. And we flew all the way out there. I'm in the Fraser Valley out by Vancouver. Jay's still in Saskatoon. Kevin was in Toronto. Now he's moved out to Nova Scotia, and Brian has been in Nova Scotia. So we flew, basically all 4 of us across the country, and our one crew guy, Dean Friesen, oddly enough, so this is weird. So he flew from Saskatoon to St. John's, Newfoundland, arrived at 3 a.m. in the morning. We found out the show was canceled at midnight, so he literally stayed in the airport. I got him his return ticket, and he literally flew right back home.
Oh, it's
Never
terrible.
got to the hotel.
That's terrible. Yeah. And also, you just mentioned it, but Kevin, the reference to Kevin is Kevin Kane from the Grapes of Wrath is now like a full-time member of Northern Pikes.
Yeah, we're very happy to have Kevin. He's still in the Grapes of Wrath. I mean, they're a great band, and they're from the same era. Like the early to mid 80s is when they got started. And Brian ran into Kevin. They found out they lived right near each other about 8 years ago in Toronto. They were both out there. And, they kind of started hanging out, and they had a project that they started, a duo called Kane and Potvin. They did a couple of EP albums and some great songs, and they did a lot of shows, a lot of live shows. And then when the Pikes decided to do a 30th anniversary Big Blue Sky tour in 2017, and we thought, because we had been playing 3-piece actually for a couple of years before that. Merle Brick, one of the founding members of the band, stopped playing with us in 2005. We're still good friends with Merle. It's unfortunate he just, it's actually a miracle that bands can stay together because it's really hard. People get, different interests, things happen, kids come along.
Sure.
Families, things change. And so Merle worked for this, or still does work for the city of Saskatoon. So it became very hard for him to actually start to get time off to play shows. And at some point, your employer says, "Okay, buddy, are you a musician or do you work for the city?"
Right.
So, and there was pensions involved with working there for so long. Merle had been there for 20 years at that point, and so that kind of just changed everything for him. He just lost his interest for actually traveling and playing. So, when Kevin came along, the idea of that doing the Big Blue Sky reunion tour. or not so much a reunion tour, but a celebration of the 30th anniversary, Brian said, well, why don't we, ask Kevin if he wants to play? And because he really fits in well, we found out, we didn't really know at that time, but he plays guitar great, he sings well,
really
he has
well.
his own songs, and, he just really, it makes a lot of sense. It's like it's not forced in any way. He just comfortably fits in.
Yep.
So since 2017, Kevin Kane has been part of the band.
Yeah.
Now,
go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say, now, you're talking about a 30th anniversary tour back in celebration for 30 years, right? Does that seem weird though, in a weird way? Because for me, I DJ'd in the clubs a lot, and I did a 30th anniversary, years back ago, kind of in honor of one of the first clubs I worked at, and I thought to myself, I went, when I'm walking in there thinking, holy hell, it hasn't been 30 years. And then I look at my hair, my hairline's a lot higher than it used to be. And I've got a lot of wrinkles, things like that. I mean, what was it like, thinking 30 years ago we released this record? Holy hell.
Well, a lot of the same feelings that you had. I mean, you look back and go, wow, has it really been that long? And I guess playing the songs have always been second nature to us. Playing songs like Teen Land, we've played that, I think, in every show we've ever played, Things to Do for Money. Some of those older songs from the first album, Dancing in a Dance Club. And it is a strange thing. It's hard to believe that the band's been together that long. And I think you hear that from most musicians, even the Stones. I'm sure they didn't expect to be playing stadiums in 2021. I mean, back in the 60s. I mean, if you ask them, even with McCartney and the Beatles and John Lennon, they all thought, hey, if this lasts 6 months, that'd be great. And that's kind of almost, I think, how it starts out with people, because you have great ideas and thoughts and dreams, but who knows if they're ever going to come together. And like I mentioned earlier, for any group to stay together, a group of guys or women, people, for 30, 40 years is just remarkable. And we're now coming up to our 38th year. Actually, the band started in January of 1984.
Right.
Well, being in a band is almost like being weird. It's a family. It's a family / marriage in a weird, in a way. And I've always been more impressed with the people that can stay together in a relationship than than people who say, who've had a lot of quote conquest. So congratulations for 38 years of the Northern Pikes.
Thank you.
Don, I've always thought of the Northern Pikes as kind of like prairie sensibility. When the music was always so much different than anyone else in the Canadian music scene at the time. And is that an ode to Saskatoon and your roots?
Well, I think a lot of that comes from the fact in the 70s when we were, like, I was born in 61, so in the 70s we're, teenagers, young teenagers starting to play music, 74, 75. And in Saskatoon in those years, we didn't have a proper big enough arena, so all of the big shows, concerts, went from Calgary, Edmonton, right over to Winnipeg. They missed Regina and Saskatoon completely.
Right.
And as a result, there were no videos. I mean, you have to rewind time and think no internet, really the only connection you had was a radio station or stations, magazines, and buying product. And so, as a result, I think anyone growing up in that kind of circumstance, isolation, for lack of a better word, you have to, I think, find your own identity. And you're not really copying many things because you don't have things to really copy, to look at, or to, not like today, you can turn on any computer or device and see anything you want. And there's so many images coming at us now with technology that it's hard to, it's overload in a way. So I really think that was a part of our unique sound and style and attitude and everything else, was that we had an agent once say to us in Saskatoon, do you think you're good enough to play in Calgary? I mean, and we thought, well, I don't know, like, are people smarter in Calgary, or what do you mean by that? It's kind of a weird thing to say, but on the other hand, I understand totally what the person meant, is that
right.
When you go to bigger cities, they've seen a lot there. And so when you come, you better be good. And it kind of like the Beatles going to Hamburg or getting out of Liverpool. It's like, they must have been told at some point, "Do you think you're good to play in London, England?" Or it's just kind of it's a small town thing that it's just hard to a sports player. Do you think you can play in the NHL if you're from Humboldt, Saskatchewan?
But the one thing that I've always thought about you guys, and even Canadian bands back in the 80s, a lot is it seemed like you guys always kind of wrote songs that everybody could understand, because maybe because it was Saskatoon, a smaller town, things like that. Some of the songs you wrote were kind of for like the guys that weren't the jocks, weren't the it was kind of like the I don't want to say the less popular people, but you could kind of understand there was that little bit of like, hey, we're not like you said, not Calgary, we're not Vancouver, we're not this. We're writing for I don't know. When I say the lesser guy, I don't mean it in a disrespectful way, but almost from a point where it's like you said, hey, listen, we're not the big city, and I've always appreciated that with your stuff.
Well, that's a good observation. In the early days, Jay Semko, bass player, singer, songwriter with the band, wrote most of the songs. Co-write started to happen. Merle and Brian were writing songs starting in 86, 87, 88. And, when I met those guys, they were playing in a band called The Idols, which was and this is 1980, in Saskatoon. For lack of a better word, they were our first new wave band in Saskatoon. And I didn't know, prior to meeting them, I didn't know nothing about XTC. The Police, I had just kind of heard Roxanne was getting going. Joe Jackson, Squeeze, The Jam, Horselips. There were so many, and these were bands that we covered to start, or the Idols did anyway. I was playing in a band. We were playing Trooper, April Wine, BTO, Prison. So it was like, it was such an eye opener that for me to hear this kind of music. Like they would buy. There was a store in Saskatoon called Tramps, which sold new records, used records, books, and that sort of thing. And that's where you'd go find artists that you wouldn't hear on commercial radio in Saskatoon. I was just listening to the wrong station, I guess. I had no clue what those guys were into, but when I heard it, it all made sense to me. It was like, and it was a fresh outlook for me, because I hadn't really been exposed to any kind of that kind of even drum grooves is what that kind of music required, Sex Pistols, that sort of thing. And so it was a good opener for me. And, Jay, he wrote songs, like you say, Greg, that were very personal. Jackie T is a song that Jay wrote in 1980. We played that in the Idols, and it was very much the same arrangement as we recorded it many years later. And so I think Jay's always been an honest writer. He's like he said years ago, he never tried to use words like fantasy, and it was more realistic. Things to do for money. Songs about everyday situations we're all faced with. Things, what do you do to make money, especially now in COVID? I mean, it's even taken on a kind of a whole different meaning. So
well, one of the things that we've been doing to make money, you can always go to www.hotguysoftheinternet.com. That's Chris and my page. We have 2 subscribers.
Oh boy. Yeah, you and me. Yeah. So
I know even your wife hasn't subscribed. What is that?
So anyway, Don, how has COVID treated you guys? I mean, obviously you canceled a concert on the East Coast, and then everything just came to a halt.
Well, yeah, we started in 2019, the fall. So October, we played our last 2 shows prior to COVID at the Horseshoe, November 1 and 2 of 2019. And a couple of weeks before that, we had started recording what initially was going to be a 30th anniversary celebration of Snow in June. Snow in June came out in 1990, so 2020 was going to be 30 years. So we were preparing to do some kind of what we wanted to do was a re-recording of the songs from that album acoustically, reimagine them.
Sure.
And so we started that. We got 7 songs off to a start in 2019, came home for Christmas after we played the Horseshoe in November. then January, February of 2020, we're starting to make plans, and we're hearing about COVID, this virus that's going around, pandemic, which it turned out to be. And then basically we canceled our studio bookings for that spring, and all our shows started to get canceled. And that's just where it started. And we've only played twice in like almost 2 years now, and that's a record for 38 years.
Right.
So and everybody's in the same boat. That's the weird thing about it. It's, who would have ever thought that something would affect the whole planet at the same time? It's extremely difficult. And so we now did another session a couple of months ago. We're doing this recording in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia, which is near Lunenburg, where Brian lives, and now Kevin Kane and his wife have moved out to the Western Shore as well. And so you never know. Jay and I might end up, we might be the Atlantic bubble, as they called it, the 4 provinces of there. We might all end up there someday, but we really do enjoy it there. So we can stay in Brian's house. He's got a big enough house that everybody can have their own room, which is great. And, traveling on the road, especially recording, where it's very expensive to stay, on the road.
Yeah.
So this has worked out great. We can stay with Brian. His wife's great with cooking, and so we have home-cooked meals. And, we get to hang out together, and it's really quite a cool experience. So now what we've decided to do is we're using 7 songs from the Snow and June album as re-records, and the guys have each written a new song, so there's 3 new songs to make 10. We always like to try to keep at least 10 songs on an album. And that's the plan now. We've pretty much finished all of our tracking. We've got a couple of guys that we're going to use as session players to play some instruments that we can't play.
Right.
Like fiddle and some... it's been nice having Kevin in the band because he plays banjo, he plays some mandolin, he plays some keyboards.
Well, I think Ashley McIsaac still lives in Windsor.
Yeah, well, there you go.
We'll send them over to you.
So we'll send Ashley out your way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, Ashley McIsaac's a great musician.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the plan. We're hoping to get it ready for release in 2022. If all goes well. So that's just what we're hoping is going to work out. And then
a tour, right? We're talking about a joint tour.
Yeah, we've got 7 shows planned. Well, they've been postponed now for a second year, but with TPOH. We're calling it the Northern Happiness Tour, and we're doing 7 cities in Ontario.
Northern Happiness for the Pursuit of Happiness and the Northern Pikes.
Yeah. And we did play with them at the Commodore in Vancouver a couple of years ago with Pursuit, and again, they're from the same era as the Pikes. We used to hang out and watch them at clubs in Toronto, and they would come and watch us. And we didn't really play too many shows together. We did a couple of festivals where you're, 2 bands out of 12 or something. So it's hard to meet people when you do stuff like that. But they've always been good friends. And Johnny Sinclair, who was the original bass player with Pursuit of Happiness, was from Saskatoon.
Right? Yeah. Well, we love Johnny with Universal Honey.
Yes. Yeah. Johnny, Leslie, and they're busy there, and they've also got another side project called Tucker Lane in Saskatoon. So, it's funny how, you sort of run into people again as years go by.
Yep.
And even you guys, we've done shows together in the past in the Windsor area, and here we are talking again. So it's very cool.
Yeah, really is.
But it's funny. Talking about like the Pursuit of Happiness and going back with 5440, Grapes of Wrath. I think that was kind of a strange research. Things kind of dropped off a little bit for Canadian bands. There was a couple of the punk rock bands in the late 70s and early 80s. There was the bands like the Forgotten Rebels and stuff like that. But then it seemed like Canadian bands kind of, there was that resurgence, especially thanks to college radio, like bands like stations like CJAM, or then in Toronto you had a station like CFNY, a big, was it 100,000 watts up there. But you guys kind of were that new introduction to a lot of Canadian music that people might not have heard and then you guys paved the way for bands like the Doughboys and stuff like the Next Wave, and reintroduced to kind of be. It almost made Canadians remember that there was a lot of great music coming out of Canada, and it seemed like every once in a while Canadians, the CRTC rules force Canadian, and I hate saying force Canadian radio or music on Canadians, but sometimes people go, oh, you hear radio stations say, oh, we have to play it. But you guys were that wave that went, wait a second, there's a lot of talent in Canada. And I think we were really lucky growing up in the 80s to have bands like the Northern Pikes, where, you could actually say, hey, look at this. Here's a new record. We're excited to play it on the radio.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, every musician will say the same. To hear your song on the radio is it's hard to explain how that feels. Really, it's such a.
What was the first Northern Pike song that you heard on the radio?
Well, that would have been Teenland. Yeah, the first song I ever heard us do played on the radio was "Raging," a song we did in the Idols, a song that Merle wrote, and we recorded. That was our first single. We recorded in Rosetown, Saskatchewan, in July of 1980. And I remember we were on Battle of the Bands, where you phone in and you vote for songs. And, I think we won 5 nights, but that was because I think we had a lot of local fans at the time. But I went and sat with Keith Fitzgerald, our one roadie at the time, and we were at the A&W on 8th Street in Saskatoon, and just, back in those days where they served you at your window and you had the tray that, root beer. And that's where I first heard our band, the Idols, on the radio. But Teenland was in Toronto. We were already out there, and that was, because again, that was on another level.
Sure.
I mean, we were behind a record company, Virgin Records, and the late great Doug Chappelle, who signed the Pikes, literally changed our life, really. And Fraser Hill, Ed Smeal, our 2 managers in those days, who worked tirelessly. To actually, they believed, again, it's something that you can't almost pay people. You can't pay someone to be a manager and actually have the enthusiasm, kind of like Brian Epstein with the Beatles. I mean, it's you either are into it or you're not. And Fraser went a million miles for the band and worked hard and actually, got us our record deal. So
awesome.
Yeah, hearing your stuff on the radio, I mean, we're always grateful and thankful to hear our songs.
But then it must have been even crazier in the sense of, back when videos were still kind of a new thing. All of a sudden, now you're being told, hey, you record an album and shoot a video. So, Much Music. I mean, Teenland was on Much Music, and then the rest. As the career progressed. I mean, that's got to be even a weirder thing, kind of going, hey, look at that. That's me on TV.
Well, that was strange. I mean, and especially in those days, we hadn't really seen too much of ourselves on a screen, on a video screen or TV. So it's kind of like when you first hear yourself making a record or recording, you go, I mean, the very first time on a little cassette in my basement with a friend of mine, it's like you almost want to quit. You think, wow, does it really sound like that?
Yeah.
Like that.
But fairly, or honestly, though, I mean, the type of equipment that you use does make a difference.
Sure it does.
I mean, so...
Absolutely does.
Yeah, but, seeing yourself in a video for the first time, it's another unusual experience to have,
Don, you know what? It's great having you. You guys are going to be going on a short tour through Ontario in October of 22. Right.
It seems like
22, and that's with the Pursuit of Happiness, and we'll what we'll do is we'll put all kinds of details underneath this and the audio podcast too for people to kind of follow the Northern Pikes, the release of the new album, and looking forward to seeing you guys in Southern Ontario.
Excellent. Well, we are anxious to get back out. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, great to see you guys.
I'm actually thinking we should do a road trip, get a bunch of people together from the Windsor area, and relive our youth again. Right, and I hope you don't mind me saying that, but relive our youth. like last night I was working at a I was helping out a friend at her bar, and last night we were listening to lots of Northern Pikes songs because I said that I was telling people we were talking, and next thing you know is people were like, play She Ain't Pretty, play this song. So we were listening to a lot of Northern Pikes last night.
There you go.
Well, that's cool.
Thanks, Don.
Yes,
Great to
thank
see
you
you, buddy.
guys. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Let's not make it so long next time.
That's right. Yeah.
What's 25 years?
Yeah, what's 25 years amongst friends? Oh, it's always great to catch up with old friends, and wow.
Yeah.
You just kind of think to yourself, wow, I think I'm really getting old. But boy, he looks great, by the way. I can't believe it looks like he hasn't aged a bit.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We're getting older, and he still looks great.
That's right, yeah. There's a song in there, too, somewhere, by the way. I'm not sure what it is, but it's She Ain't Pretty. Well, it ain't pretty, so there you go. Oh, well, that's the way it goes. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. That's it. We're going to call it. Tune in next week, every Friday at noon. And also just check below this, and we'll have all the Northern Pikes details. And we'll see you next week on Gnyp Gnop. See you, Greg.
Hey, buddy.